Texas was the safe haven in every housing crash. Until now. In the next year, experts are warning that home prices in 10 Texas cities aren't just set to dip, they're poised to crash, with declines that could outrun the 2008 bust. Some markets already show the telltale signs: listings stacking up, desperate price cuts, and mortgage costs that swallow half the average income. The top 10 Texas cities where home prices will crash in 2025 isn't just a warning, it's a roadmap for where the ground is falling away fastest and what triggers could turn a slowdown into a collapse. Which city breaks first, and why did no one see it coming? A Texas housing crash isn't just a headline, it's a measurable event. In this documentary, a crash means home prices dropping at least 8 to 15% within 12 to 18 months. That's the yardstick. Anything less is a correction. Anything more is a full-scale rout. During the pandemic boom, Texas home values soared. Between 2020 and 2022, the statewide median price jumped more than 40%, according to Texas MLS and census data. That kind of surge outpaced wage growth, rent growth, and even the wildest years of the last 2 decades. But by early 2025, the rocket ride stalled. The statewide median price is now up just 0.3% year over year, essentially flatlining after years of breakneck gains. Inventory has ballooned, with a 30.7% increase in homes for sale across Texas and months of supply edging close to 5. That's not a crash everywhere, but it's the classic setup for one in hotspots where supply keeps climbing and demand dries up. For buyers and owners, the real pain threshold is simple math. If a city's prices drop 8% or more in a year, that wipes out 3 years of typical home equity. In some Texas metros, the risk is even sharper because purchase prices ran so far ahead of local incomes. In places like Austin, Houston suburbs, and DFW exurbs, the price-to-income ratio climbed by 40 to 60% since 2020. Mortgage payments, including taxes and insurance, now eat up more than a third of median household income in many of these areas. When that affordability ceiling hits, buyers pull back, and the price floor gets slippery fast. The numbers tell the story. A crash isn't just a scary word, it's a specific trackable break in the market measured by double-digit price drops and erased equity. Over the next hour, each city on this list will be judged by the same yardstick. The question isn't whether prices can fall, it's how far, how fast, and who gets caught holding the bag. Every city on this list is exposed to at least one of 5 fault lines that have historically triggered sharp home price drops in Texas. The first is overbuilding. Builders across the state issued permits at a pace that outstripped real demand. Permits outpaced closed sales by 30% in some metros during the 2021 to 2023 boom. Now, unsold homes are stacking up, and standing inventory is pushing months of supply well above normal. When new homes linger on the market, price cuts follow. Affordability collapse is the next fault line. In cities like Austin and the Houston suburbs, the cost of owning a median-priced home, including principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, now claims more than 35% of the average household's pre-tax income. That's a payment-to-income ratio not seen in Texas since the late 1980s oil bust. When buyers hit that ceiling, demand doesn't just slow, it can vanish overnight. Investor saturation is another silent threat. Entire neighborhoods in the DFW and Austin suburbs were snapped up by institutional buyers. At the 2022 peak, over 25% of new homes in some corridors were bought by funds, not families. Now, many of those same investors are pulling out or liquidating portfolios. When they sell, they don't wait for peak pricing. They drop units in bulk, driving down comps and spooking traditional buyers. Mortgage rate sensitivity is squeezing local buyers. With rates hovering near 7%, first-time buyers and move-up families are locked out or forced to back out. Builder cancellation rates are topping 15% in several metros, and the pool of qualified buyers keeps shrinking. When the cost of borrowing jumps, every price cut feels like a moving target. Finally, there's the decoupling from job growth. In places like Lubbock, Killeen, and Tyler, housing construction surged while local employment flatlined. When new jobs don't materialize, the pipeline of new residents dries up, and houses built for future growth sit empty. The more fault lines a city crosses, the greater the risk of a true crash, especially when rising insurance premiums and Texas's nation-leading property taxes quietly add hundreds of dollars a month to every mortgage payment. These are the filters that separate a soft landing from a hard fall. Lubbock sits in the heart of West Texas, but its housing market is running on fumes. Inventory has climbed to its highest level since 2015, with months of supply now above 6 and days on market averaging more than 75. job growth has stalled and population gains have barely moved the needle since 2022. Builders are still finishing projects started during the boom, but new permit activity is falling off fast. Homes are sitting unsold for weeks and absorption rates have dropped to decade lows. If this pace continues through spring, local prices could slide by 5 to 8%, erasing years of slow, steady equity. Beaumont, Port Arthur tells a different story, but the outcome looks just as fragile. The region's fortunes are tied to the petrochemical and refinery cycles, and every employment swing hits the housing market like a wave. Permits are down 22% year over year, yet unsold spec homes are stacking up. Insurance premiums have surged by $300 a month since 2022, making ownership even harder to afford. During the most recent renewal season, homeowners and insurers clashed over steep rate hikes, adding another layer of volatility. The market is caught between shrinking demand and rising costs, and the result is a growing glut of homes that few can afford to buy or insure. Midland and Odessa are no strangers to boom and bust cycles. When oil prices fall below $70 a barrel, the effects ripple through every corner of the local economy. Median home prices are already down 3.1% year over year, and days on market have stretched past 80. Builders kept up a steady pace through the 2021 to 2023 oil surge, but now starts are falling and unsold inventory is rising. In the 1980s, a similar oil bust triggered price plunges of 20 to 30%, an episode still cited by local historians as a warning. As one regional economist puts it, in Midland, real estate always follows the oil patch. When crude drops, so do the comps. If energy markets soften further, the area could see another sharp correction, with price declines moving faster than most homeowners or investors expect. El Paso stands apart from the rest of Texas, and not in a way that offers much comfort. The city's housing market is facing a surge in active listings, up 36% since the start of 2025. That means more homes on the market than at any point in the last decade, but not enough buyers to absorb them. Days on market have climbed past 80, and the months of supply now sit at nearly 7. Most new buyers here are using FHA loans, with more than 30% of recent mortgages backed by low down payments and thin equity. When prices slip, these owners have little cushion to fall back on. Local wages haven't kept pace with the cost of buying, and appraisal gaps have become a sticking point in private realtor forums. Sellers are forced to cut prices or offer closing cost credits just to keep deals alive. If inventory keeps rising and wage growth stalls, the risk of an 8 to 12% price drop is no longer theoretical. It's a looming reality. Killeen, Temple, and Belton form a corridor that lives and dies by the military calendar. Fort Cavazos, formerly Fort Hood, anchors the region, but the demand it brings is anything but steady. Construction boomed during the pandemic, with builders betting on a flood of new arrivals. Instead, permanent job growth lagged behind, and the market is now saturated. Months of supply have broken through 7, and days on market are pushing 80. Renters, once priced out, are now finding more options as flippers and investors retreat. Price cuts and builder concessions are everywhere: mortgage buydowns, free appliances, and cash at closing. Yet even with incentives, buyers hesitate. The transient nature of the military population means that any drop in demand can leave entire subdivisions half empty. If absorption doesn't recover, local prices could fall 6 to 10%, wiping out years of equity for anyone who bought at the peak. The warning signs are clear. When construction outpaces jobs and buyers lose confidence, the market can unravel quickly. Tyler, once buoyed by the pandemic migration wave, now faces a sharp reversal. Median home prices have slipped 1.2% year over year, wiping out much of the surge seen in 2022 and 2023. Inventory to sales ratios have tripled since last summer, reaching 6.2, the highest since before the pandemic. Homes linger on the market for 68 days on average, up more than 50% in a year. Nearly a quarter of listings are seeing price cuts, and builders are offering incentives of $10,000 to $12,000 off new contracts. Cancellations have climbed to 18%. Local investors, once active, have stepped back, leaving high-end and flipped properties unsold. As a regional broker notes, liquidity is vanishing and the pipeline of out-of-town buyers has dried up. Houston's outer suburbs, Katy, Richmond, Spring, are now the epicenter of overbuilding. Inventory has jumped 31% year over year, pushing months of supply above 5. Price reductions appear on 26% of listings, and homes now sit for 62 days before selling. Builders are offering $7,000 to $15,000 in credits, closing costs, or upgrades to keep deals alive. Cancellation rates have hit 17%. Institutional investors who once bought entire blocks have slashed activity. Their share has dropped from 21% at the peak to just 14%. Mortgage applications are down 31% from last year. Daniel Oney of Texas A&M's Real Estate Research Center observes, the outer ring of Houston is where overbuilding and affordability crunches are colliding. Price cuts are the only thing moving inventory. In the Dallas-Fort Worth suburbs, Frisco, McKinney, Allen, the retreat takes a different shape. Median prices are down 1.4% year over year. Inventory is up 28%, with months of supply now at 5.2. Days on market have jumped 48% since January, reaching 66 days. Price cuts now affect 21% of listings, more than triple last year's share. Builders report 15% cancellation rates and incentives of $8,000 to $11,000 per contract. The most striking change is the exit of institutional investors. Their share has halved since 2022, and cash buyers have nearly vanished. As one Dallas housing economist puts it, the liquidity shock from investor pullback is driving the sharpest drops in the DFW exurbs. When the cash dries up, comps fall fast. Austin, once the symbol of Texas's unstoppable housing boom, now stands as a cautionary tale. Median home prices have dropped 3% year over year and sit more than 17% below their 2022 peak. Inventory has surged. Active listings are up 35% from last summer, pushing the inventory to sales ratio to 6.6, the highest since the 2012 downturn. Months of supply have climbed above 6, and homes now linger on the market for an average of 75 days. Nearly a third of all listings have already seen price cuts, with builders slashing prices and offering incentives averaging $14,000 just to keep deals alive. Cancellation rates on new contracts have reached 19%, and major builders have pulled back on new starts, leaving land idle and subcontractors without work. Investor demand, once a driving force, has faded fast. Large portfolios are being liquidated at discounts, and the share of investor purchases has fallen by half since the peak. Tech layoffs and the retreat of pandemic-era newcomers have gutted the buyer pool, leaving sellers chasing lower and lower offers. For Austin, the correction is sharper than anything seen during the 2008 crisis. Every price cut resets neighborhood comps, and each new incentive signals growing distress. If absorption fails to recover, the city faces the real possibility of double-digit declines before the year is out. San Antonio now carries the heaviest risk in Texas. Inventory has doubled in the hardest-hit tracts since February, especially in the far west, northwest, and Comal County suburbs, where speculative building ran wild. Contract cancellations have soared to 22% in those new subdivisions, twice the long-term average and among the highest rates in the country. Builders are scrambling to unload standing inventory with mortgage buydowns, free upgrades, and closing credits. In some fringe communities, list prices are being cut by up to 7% just to attract a serious offer. New construction closings have fallen 36% compared to last year, and days on market now average 83, the slowest sales pace in the U.S. for a major metro. Stories are surfacing of buyers who walked away from deposits rather than close on homes that no longer appraise or fit their budgets, citing unaffordable payments and unexpected insurance hikes. While established neighborhoods closer to the city core remain steadier, the outer ring is buckling under the weight of oversupply and evaporating demand. If cancellations and inventory keep climbing, San Antonio risks a price spiral that could drag down even its more resilient markets. For Texas homeowners and buyers, this is not a drill. The crash isn't just coming, it's already underway in the state's two most watched cities. 4 numbers tell the story before headlines ever do. First, watch the contract cancellation rate. When more than 15% of signed deals fall through, especially on new builds, it's a sign buyers are backing out en masse. Second, track inventory growth versus sales. If homes for sale are rising twice as fast as closings, supply is overwhelming demand. Third, check the share of listings with price cuts. When over 20% of homes are dropping their asking price, sellers are getting desperate. And finally, days on market above 75 and rising means buyers have vanished and liquidity is drying up fast. Homeowners facing falling prices should review recent sales in their neighborhood, not just online estimates. Appraisal appeals have saved the average Texan about $1,200 this year, worth the paperwork if your tax bill feels out of step. Buyers, especially in flagged suburbs, now hold the upper hand. With days on market rising and price cuts common, negotiate for closing credits or repairs. Wait for the pace of new listings to slow before making aggressive offers. Investors must screen for positive cash flow, not just appreciation. In Houston and Dallas cores, rents are still up 3% year over year, while many suburbs are flat. Follow the rent trend before taking on new risk. In 2025, Texas homeowners are facing a market unlike any in recent memory. Median home prices statewide are virtually flat after rising more than 40% in just 2 years, and insurance premiums have climbed 19% since 2022. This documentary tracked the 5 fault lines: overbuilding, affordability collapse, investor withdrawal, mortgage rate shock, and job decoupling. Now converging in cities from Lubbock to San Antonio, inventory has doubled in San Antonio since February, while price cuts affect 1 in every 4 listings in Houston's suburbs. Yet not every city will follow the same path, and several data points, including future interest rate moves and job growth, remain uncertain. The evidence shows that when inventory grows twice as fast as sales and buyer cancellations cross 15%, sharp corrections follow. Today, Texas's housing markets are fragmenting. Some neighborhoods face steep declines, while others hold steady. What happens next will depend on local fundamentals and the choices of buyers, sellers, and policymakers. The warning signs are visible. The outcome is not yet written.